Hello, welcome to the Austin Parks Foundation Park Summit series. You can view this on Facebook today, but you can also view this later on our website, austinparks.org/parks-summit. Sorry, we had a little technical difficulty getting on the live stream today. Always seems to be something. I'm very excited about today's panel that we're bringing you. It's called Youth in the Lead. It's about the intersection of racial equity in the environment. We have some really awesome panelists today that I'm going to introduce you to very quickly so we can get on with the conversation. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We will allow a little bit of time at the end for questions, so feel free to use the comment section on Facebook to share questions, and I'll be kind of moderating them, and at the very end we'll leave a few minutes to ask them. Thank you all for joining, and I'm going to hand it off to Kirsten Johansen, who's with the Parks and Recreation Park Rangers. And if all the panelists could just go ahead and turn on their video and unmute themselves so that everybody can see your faces. Kirsten.
Kathleen, thank you so much for having us today. We are excited to be here. So we're part of the Cities Connecting Children to Nature and the Youth Leadership Working Group. CCCN is a national initiative that seeks to create a more equitable and abundant access to nature in cities through a partnership between the National League of Cities, Institute for Youth, Education and Families, and the Children in Nature Network. The Youth Leadership Working Group is a priority strategy for CCCN Austin, and the tri-chairs are Magali, Gabby, and I, and we coordinate monthly meetings for young leaders and organizations that serve young people, and we are very proud that our monthly meetings are co-facilitated by young folks. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Gabby.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. So just to share our vision for our Youth Leadership Working Group, we imagine an Austin in which young people can easily access careers in the outdoors, nature, and the environment, and are fairly compensated for their contributions, and that the field and leadership within also then represents those communities that we serve. I'm going to pass it on to Magali to introduce some of our shared meanings and definitions that we'll be using today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. In order to really ground ourselves in this discussion, and before we really go on to the panel, we really wanted to offer some definitions for some of the things that we're thinking about and talking about. So the first definition that we have for you is for BIPOC. That might be an acronym that you've been hearing, and that stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. And we use this because of the unequal levels of injustice that, BIPOC people face, and it's we talk about BIPOC people at the intersection of the environment because of previous racial injustices and inequities, and just in general as they relate to the environment and not. And another one that we use, a definition, is for racial equity. Racial equity means the condition where race no longer predicts a person's quality of life outcomes in their community. So when we talk about equity, we are specifically talking about racial equity. And then another definition is for ally, which is defined as an active, consistent, and arduous practice of unlearning and reevaluating, in which a person in a position of privilege and power seeks to operate in solidarity with a marginalized group. Ally is not something that you can truly claim. Other people from marginalized groups should be the ones to really decide if you are being an ally in any given moment. And I'm going to pass it on to Kirsten.
So hello, I'm Kirsten Johansen. I work for the City of Austin Parks and Rec Department in the Natural Resources Division as a park ranger. And I coordinate the cadet program, which is a workforce development program that focuses on racial equity and youth leadership. And our big goal is creating pathways to meaningful employment with leadership potential for our young folks. Personally and professionally, I feel incredibly passionate about environmental intersectionalism, or working with dismantling the racist system and advocating for environmental sustainability. And the natural resources field that we work in is still heavily dominated by white people. and primarily white folks are the ones in leadership positions in this field. So we've got a lot of work to do. I'm excited for you to hear the panelists today. As a white person in this field and someone who works for a racial equity focused program and with a lot of youth of color, I've definitely put in a ton of work to unlearn and learn and develop a racial equity way of thinking that I try to bring into my daily work. I've certainly experienced a lot of discomfort and unlearning in this field or in this journey, and I've acknowledged I'm very uncomfortable right now talking about this, so that's a good example. Unlearning for myself and looking at my privilege as a cisgendered, able-bodied white person and how that has gotten me a lot of things I have today. I've dealt with feeling white guilt and dealt with my good intent having sometimes harmful impact for folks of color or the people I work with. So it's definitely been uncomfortable, but I've learned a lot that you have to get through that and continue the work. And I've learned, just like Magali said, the allyship is a constant daily thing. And I'm continuing to always develop that. Over the years, and more recently, I've gotten braver to be able to use my voice to elevate the voices of other colleagues of color and leaders of colors that I work with. And my power and privilege as a white person, I've definitely been able to connect with other white people doing this work and interested in this work, and try to encourage them to be brave in their spaces as well, or courageous. So my call to folks who identify as white in the field are keep doing this work for yourself, look internally and reflect, and really think critically about yourself and the work you do. Be willing to learn and unlearn, be uncomfortable, and don't ask people of color to do the work for you. There's so many great resources out there that can help you engage in this work and learn. Also look at yourself as a gatekeeper, where you hold power and where you can share power for those who've been historically left out, like creating opportunities for young folks of color to be on decision-making bodies and find meaningful employment or create meaningful employment opportunities. And look at your budgets. Rocio Villalobos says budgets are living and moral documents. So really take a look at if you have a line item for equity. If you don't, are you actually doing equitable work? So with that, I look forward to connecting with folks who are committed to this work and wanting to learn and engage in this work more and find ways to collaborate. So please reach out. I'm sure Kathleen will share our contact information. And I'm going to pass it off to Magali.
Hello again. So yes, I am Magali or Magali Arredondo Lopez, and I use she, her pronouns, and I work out of the Urban Forest program within the city of Austin. And I co-facilitate the Youth Forest Council, which is an internship for young folks to learn about green careers, but has also quickly really become an internship to learn about racial equity and to think about how that shows up in the way that we do our work. And to explore these topics and explore racial equity at the intersection of environmental work. One of the things that I'm particularly excited about as I have come into this work in the environmental field is relearning our narratives as BIPOC people, as Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It's to reclaim our narratives and our stories of how we connect to nature. And also, I think that it's incredibly important for white people to uplift narratives and to unlearn assumptions and historical narratives based on what has been previously been thought of as how people of color connect to or don't to the environment and nature. And I think that this is a really important piece of racial equity work and also moving forward environmentalism. If we want to bring people together and we want to really move forward and push forward with preserving our planet and our environment, and we also need to preserve the people and do it at the same time. And I think narratives are really powerful. It's a really powerful way of engaging people. So, you know, if we're curious about people and we're curious about the way that they connect to nature, then we're engaging with them more. And then now we have power behind caring for the environment and caring for other people. So I just really encourage you to think about the assumptions that maybe you have, or the stories that maybe you have heard, and to just rethink and reconsider and to seek out other stories and other narratives, particularly for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and the connections that exist with the environment. I'm going to pass it on to Gabby.
Hey, thanks Magali and Kirsten. My name is Gabby Benitez. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I, alongside sharing with these lovely folks, the Youth Leadership Working Group, I manage the Keep Austin Beautiful education team, which spans lots of different things in terms of connecting youth of many different ages to nature. But I'm definitely really driven by the work that we're doing to, work on developing these green career pathways that allow for equitable access to the field for, youth across the city. And as part of this, really working to advocate for paid internship programs and equitably paid internship programs and opportunities, including even, paying folks for serving on leadership committees. And in addition to that, really recognizing the leadership that youth already possess and working in really partnership with youth versus seeing as things as a hierarchy. And so really celebrating that leadership. And that's one thing that I'm really excited about today's panel as well. But along with all of that, really working to recognize those barriers to access to green spaces and the environmental field, and actively working against these systems of oppression that are really a lot of the environmental field and even environmentalism are rooted in systems of racism and oppression. And so trying to actively bring that up, talk about it, go through those uncomfortable conversations, and continue to do that really active work to build representation and inclusivity in the field. I think it's just about time for our panel, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Brandon to get us started.
Hello, I am Brandon Contreras. I am a park ranger for the city of Austin. I currently facilitate the cadet program that Kirsten had mentioned earlier. And today I'm going to be the facilitator for our conversation. If we could start off by having everybody else speak your name, your pronouns, your title, and brief description of what you are doing with your time or group you are a part of. And we can start with whoever. Or we can start off with Kiana.
Hi guys, I'm Kiana Pastrana. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am currently an intern with Austin Youth Riverwatch, and I'm also a senior at Southwestern University, getting my degree in environmental studies, and I think that's all. Happy to be here.
Cool, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. So hello, my name is Lydia Gomez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I work alongside the park rangers, so Brendan and Kirsten, with facilitating the cadet program. So I'm a peer mentor.
Hi, Hi, I'm Valeria, and I am currently a zookeeper at the Austin Zoo. I'm also working on my master's in biology with a focus in conservation. Sorry, I forgot my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Cool, thank you everybody. We're gonna start off today's conversation by talking about our connection to nature. The question is, what is your relationship to nature when you were growing up? And how does that play into what you are doing now? And if you want to go in the same order we did last time, that'd be much appreciated.
Sure, yeah, I can start. I, first of all, really like this question. And it really did make me think about my connection with nature, and it was kind of hard to pin down. I think that the most important thing I found is recognizing that both of my parents grew up on islands. So my dad grew up in Puerto Rico and my mom grew up in the Philippines. And the beach was always a place that really felt like home to them. So anytime we went to the beach, it was kind of like a kind of like a comfort, kind of sacred experience. And I think that same thing like rubbed off on me. And in nature, I would always just feel like it's a place of comfort, it's a place of healing, it's a place that's like worthy of my time, and it's a place where it's actually just like not even a place. It is like it's a shared like space, place and space. But yeah, I mean, I think that's my thoughts about that question.
Definitely.
So for me, growing up, I wasn't really an outdoors person. Little, I always liked being inside. But definitely my connection to nature now is kind of focused around like my work now as a peer mentor. I was a cadet actually in high school. So my junior and senior year, that was my biggest connection with nature when I finally kind of, those doors were open for me, I guess, in a way. So yeah, I guess just being outside now is pretty cool. Like Kiana said, it's definitely, I guess, what's the word? Like therapy, really, a form of therapy. So yeah, that's my connection to nature now.
Hi. So I'm originally from Brownsville, so it's a border town, and my family is from Mexico. My grandparents still live there. So I think my connection started when I was really little. I would go with my family on the weekends to Mexico, and we would go to my grandfather's ranch, and he had a lot of farm animals, and our family grew sorghum. So we've always had this connection to the land because it literally provided income for my family. So I think that's where it started, but I feel like throughout the years, it's been different things, like also the beach. Brownsville's really close to the beach, South Padre Island. So I would go with my family too. And yeah, bike riding, that's been a really big thing for me. And recently I bought a bike again, and I had forgotten how much I really enjoyed it. And I always try to encourage other people to just ride a bike around Lady Bird Lake. It's just really therapeutic, how Lydia and Kiana said. So yeah, I think that's multiple factors, but yeah.
Definitely. Thank you guys for sharing. Moving on to question 2, sticking to the same theme. After your first experience engaging, learning, working, or participating in environmental work or environmentalism, what motivated you to further pursue this work?
Yeah, so I assume we're going in the same order. But I feel like that does tie very greatly to the first question, because with my understanding, like as a kid, that nature is a place of comfort and healing. It's a place of like regeneration. It will always be like a shared home. I think that I already had this like innate sense to nurture it and protect it and respect it most of all. But in more like clear-cut terms, the earliest memory I have of myself taking my own like environmental initiative, I actually remember very vividly. It was a commercial on like Disney Channel maybe, and it was just advertising like this group of kids. They were all like rallying together, and they were just picking up all these cans and like crushing it with their feet and like putting it in the bin and taking it out to the curb. And they made it look so cool. And I was like, oh, I could do that. That looks fun. I could crush cans with my feet and take it out to the curb, and then I'm just like saving the world. And so literally probably as I was maybe 7 or 8, and I made my whole family start recycling from that point to the rest of my life until I moved out. And like when I was like 19 years old, I was the recycling like director of my house for the rest of the time being. And I think that was my first exposure to like taking that initiative and like knowing that, I mean, even though recycling is not like the end all be all solution, I think that was the first time I realized that it's not like trying to change the world all at once. It's something that I can be contributing to in whatever way is feasible for me. And that translates into so many other things I do today. But yeah, just like doing what I can and just knowing that I can contribute. And that looks like a different way for everyone else. So yeah, that's my first experience. And
So my first experience was definitely through the cadet program. As I mentioned before, I never was an outdoors person before the cadet program. So within that program itself, there were a lot of opportunities open to me. Through that program, it was the first time that I actually like went kayaking. I had never been kayaking before that. So that was pretty cool. And then from there, just like the people around me really were the ones who kind of motivated me to pursue this work any further. And just the thought of like being able to encourage other people who kind of went through the same experience as me, like growing up, not really having the opportunity to kind of explore the outdoors, as well as just like people who look like me, you know, skin color based, and just educating others really.
So for me, I think after graduating college, I was trying to figure out what career I wanted to pursue. And I knew that I loved animals and I wanted to work something with conservation or research. So I applied to this internship as a sea turtle research assistant in Costa Rica. And I went for 3 months, and I was living in a really little town by the beach, and it was a little hard at first getting used to because it was very simple life. I didn't have any internet or I didn't have technology. The showers were always cold, but I just grew to really like that connection I had to nature because I was always on the beach. I also connected with the community a lot. It's a small community, but it was just really, I just felt really good being able to not only work with like turtles, but also teach the community and educate them and hopefully inspire them to care about their surroundings and just seeing how like the little kids were getting involved in like recycling programs we had. And like Kiana, I also, when I came back home, I started recycling a lot, and my mom saw that I had like a recycling bin in my house, and she started doing the same. And so now she recycles, and so that kind of made me feel really good. Like, oh, I can inspire like one person. I'm sure I can help other people to find that connection with nature and care about it and do something about it, as little as it may be. Anything really helps, and just inspiring other people to do the same. So yeah.
Thank you guys. Moving on to question 3. At any time, did you encounter any challenges or barriers in connecting to nature or pursuing a career or job in environmental-based work?
The biggest challenge that I can think of in my own experience is honestly just like the sheer intimidation and like imposter syndrome of being in this field. Like Kirsten mentioned earlier, this is a very white dominated space. It's a very white dominated like field of employment. And for me, like, I'm obviously not white. And at the same time, I am a woman. So kind of trying to get myself to carve out a place for me to take up space is a really difficult thing to navigate. And I just remember my experiences sitting in my first environmental studies classes. No one ever talks about, you know, your personal cultural connection to nature. No one ever acknowledges that. They talk about their trips to national parks. They talk about their fishing trips. They talk about, you know, the volunteer they did at the zoo. They talk about like the volunteering they did with, I don't know, like a water testing research center or something like that. And I had none of that experience. So for the longest time, I kind of had that like imposter syndrome, like, am I even an environmentalist? Like, I didn't know. I knew that I cared and that I wanted to learn and I wanted to be there. But I think that my experiences were never incorporated into like our understanding of environmentalism. And I would say that's probably the biggest challenge that I've faced. And yeah, so like I said, there is a big cultural disconnect when it comes to, especially in like academia. There's a very much cultural disconnect in that way.
So my experience is kind of similar to Kiana's. For me, it was kind of my biggest challenge was just like the feeling of maybe I'm not too knowledgeable about the outdoors like everyone else. Like I mentioned before, I never had that connection with nature growing up. So that lack of connection with nature kind of led me to the thought of like, oh yeah, like maybe I'm not as smart as everyone else about the outdoors. Like I don't know anything about it. So it kind of led to like lack of confidence really within myself. But again, like growing, you learn as you grow really. So that was definitely, I think, one of my biggest challenges. It's still an ongoing challenge, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
I guess for me also just being in college and seeing like most of the students around me are white and I guess not being represented, and I didn't realize that until college because Brownsville's it's a mostly Hispanic city. So moving to Austin really opened my eyes to see how much, I guess, lack of representation there really is for people of color. And even applying to internships and jobs as a zookeeper. So zookeeping isn't the most high paying job. And I knew that going into it, but it definitely is challenging even for internships that don't pay. And I think that's part of the next question. But I had to work like as a waitress or at a call center before going to my internships because they weren't going to pay me. And when I was at my internships, I also saw how it was mostly white people or other white interns. So it definitely made me a bit intimidated and maybe a little self-conscious that there aren't other people of color doing stuff like this with nature, with animals. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are interested in working environmental jobs, but I was just, I guess it was like a shock that I didn't see it as much. Even in my job right now, me and another keeper are the only two Hispanic of the zookeepers. So even then, going in, I felt really intimidated. And now I know my other coworkers, and it's different, but it definitely, I think, would make a difference having more diversity in the workplace.
I can definitely relate to a lot of that stuff. Moving on to the next question. To understanding, what are the ways in which racial inequality presents barriers to young BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous people of color, interested in pursuing this work?
Yeah, well, I think a big part goes back to just that intimidation factor, like showing up to a space and seeing no one that looks like you, no one with the same experiences as you, or no one that would even understand your experiences or validate them in any sense. So I feel like that's probably among other things, that's the one that I can speak on because I've had the experience with. I mean, if you go onto any kind of like conservation website, like the first thing you see are probably like massive landscapes, mountains, wildlife. You don't see anything like your neighborhood park. You don't really see like your family reusing like plastic bags or containers. You make that disconnect immediately. And at the same time, I think we talked about it in like another meeting, but at the same time, there is also a stigma where people of color might not want to identify with that environmentalism label because it is white dominated, and they're like, no, like that's a white thing, that's not me, even though they are naturally conservationists. Like in my family, like we never waste food, we never waste anything senselessly. And that, I don't know, they wouldn't consider themselves environmentalists in that way, but that's the importance of doing things like this. We are redefining that and making sure that we're diversifying that. Yeah, that's my spiel.
So yeah, definitely I think one of the biggest barriers, like with the BIPOC, is just the lack of representation. Like I think it was Valeria who mentioned BIPOC representation in like the outdoors. I know for me, I kind of felt like people who worked in the environmental field were like more like, it was like more of a white person type job. And so just like not seeing people who looked like me, it was kind of hard, you know? So it was, I don't know, I think that's definitely a barrier, as well as kind of like some people in the BIPOC community just don't have awareness to like things about the outdoors. So like recreation opportunities. And also like being financially like not able to pay for certain recreational opportunities, like outdoor summer camps is definitely one. I know that's something that we touched on during, I think, a previous meeting. So yeah, I think those are one of the many barriers.
Yeah, so yeah, again, the lack of diversity, maybe even access to nature, like low-income BIPOC communities of color don't always have the same access to nature or even the proximity. So I remember one time going to an elementary school for career day, and I was talking to the kids about the zoo, and most of the kids were Hispanic. And this little girl told me like, oh, I haven't been to the zoo because it's too far away and we don't have a car. And that really impacted me. I was thinking, oh, what can I do to I guess maybe organize a field trip, or it left me thinking a lot. But that's when I realized too that even the access to nature, like not being close to a park or to the zoo even to see the animals. So yeah, I think it's how everyone said, it's several factors that play into it. Financial situations too, definitely can impact if you do an internship, if it's not paid, or if you know that you're gonna struggle or your family is struggling financially, you don't want to work and not be getting paid. So yeah, definitely there's a lot to work on.
Definitely lots of barriers. Slowly, we're pushing them down, or at least trying to. For the next question, I'm very excited for. Can you speak to the importance of paid opportunities for young folks?
They are so important. I don't know what else to say. I feel like, to put it in like in an example format, like I had to decide between doing an internship that was unpaid or working 2 jobs to pay my rent and my other living expenses. Obviously, if the internship is not paid, I'm going to have to keep working those 2 jobs. Meanwhile, my colleagues or peers who are, their parents might help them with their expenses, they might be getting their tuition paid, things like that. They're able to take that unpaid internship. So while I'm working these jobs, hardly even any free time to volunteer if I wanted to, they are getting more and more experience in their field while I am just trying to survive and make next month ends meet. So by the time we graduate together, they will have already a whole resume of experience, and I will have, not that it's not a valuable field to work in, but I will have serving experience, I will have barista experience, I had maybe a month where I volunteered at the animal shelter, and that's all I have. So when we get to the end of the line of college, guess who will get the job? Probably the person with more experience. But in the case that that opportunity was paid, I would have been able to have the same opportunity as my peer. And that is what I have to say about that. So important, so important.
Yeah, I second that. I definitely do think that it's super, super important. I actually got my first paid internship the end of my junior year going into my senior year. Before that, I had already thought of like places of like where I could work. So like fast food places, anything that I could really get into. But through the cadet program, that really did kind of like help me. So it kind of helped me to become super responsible. I became more of a leader. I think if you were to see me or like know me from a year ago, today, it's a completely different person, super closed off. But now I'm here, I'm more talkative. So yeah, I think I feel like paid internships and jobs really help people to grow and kind of shape them as a person, as well as giving them super, super, super like, I don't know, I guess like a boost of confidence too, as well as kind of just, it was in my head. Just basically really giving them more experience. It's super important, really, really important.
Yeah, I also agree. Very important. It takes away the concern of having to worry about money or choosing what you want to do for your career instead of not having to choose, and you could do both at once. So like how I mentioned, for me, I had to work as a server before going to one of my internships, and then I worked at a call center because I knew I wasn't getting paid, so I had to prepare beforehand. But not everyone has that luxury to spend time working and then go off and like not get paid for 3 months. So if I would have gotten paid, or at least like my housing being given to me, I think that would have been very helpful. And I feel like the time that I spent working could have been used for more internships instead of having to wait 3 months to work and then 3 months for my internship and then work again. So definitely time, it also takes up time that could be valuable towards someone's career or just experience. And so yeah, I definitely would love it if more young people could get paid internships and not having to make them decide whether to work a job for money or work towards their career. So that's it.
Definitely pay the young people for sure. Moving on to the next question. Y'all are involved with various programs in Austin. How do you connect your values and experiences with the work you are doing? And please share the name of your programs that you are currently helping with.
Yeah, so to reiterate, I do work with Austin Youth Riverwatch. I am an intern with them, and yes, it is a paid position, and it's the only reason that I'm able to be in that position. I think how I connect my values and experience to the work that I do with Riverwatch is going kind of back to my experience with nature growing up and my connection with nature. It's not an independent entity. Like nature is not a thing. It's not exclusive to wildlife. It's not exclusive to humans. It's a shared space and needs to be respected and considered as a shared space. But that is not being shared equally, and not everyone has the same access to that, especially when it comes to environmental quality, and how environmental hazards disproportionately affect people of color, low-income communities. So I think a big part of my work is helping people make those connections, and helping them see, not so much trying to like make them believe what I believe, but just knowing that they are entitled to, you know, like healthy living spaces. They are entitled to green spaces. They are entitled to nature just like anyone else is. And with Riverwatch, we do that with youth. So that's high school level students. And yeah, that's a little bit about how I do connect my values to my work and how I see what I'm doing as a direct extension of my experience with nature.
So for me, with like the cadet program, really, I kind of just use my own personal experience. I like sharing that with like the students who are in the program whenever I can, as well as kind of like participating in like other teams. So like I'm also in the Parks and Recreation Equity team. So we have like weekly meetings with their director and kind of focus on like strategies and goals of like to address like recommendations from like the equity office. And like so I sit and listen in those meetings and then just kind of like try and tie that into like my own like social media activism really, and kind of sharing that with like the cadets in the class, and kind of tell them that like, you know, you don't have to necessarily be in a big group, but just start within yourself, really kind of educate yourself and bring awareness to those around you. Like that's my biggest thing, really just educating myself so that that way I can go about and educate the people around me, whether that's like friends, family, or like even people out here who are watching, as well as kind of like just really anyone who's around me.
So for me, like I mentioned, I work at the zoo. So I try to talk to people at the zoo, our guests, about the animals and just educate them, hopefully inspire them to view nature in a different way of just taking care of your environment and just learning about it and being open to, I guess, other conservation. And I know zoos in general, it's a whole other conversation that some people are, it's a little controversial for some people. But like our zoo is a rescue zoo, so that's why I got interested in to begin with. But I just try to teach people and try to connect my own personal values to why I care about the environment so much. But in terms of like racial equity, I am still, because of my master's program, I've been connecting with different organizations and just trying to learn more about what they do, the work they do to connect BIPOC communities to nature. And yeah, so I'm still learning a lot, and hopefully I can participate more to create racial equity.
Yeah. How do you see your organization emphasizing racial inclusion, diversity, and equity in the programs that they provide or the services they provide?
Yeah, so the whole focus of Austin Youth Riverwatch is to serve these underserved populations. And they do that by focusing primarily on Title I schools. So these are schools who the majority of the kids that attend that school come from a certain like level of income. It's usually below a certain like threshold. I don't know the exact number, honestly. And they also focus on hiring students of color and getting them involved in environmental programs and conservation work. They even get them water quality certified. They give them stipends. They give them like after school meals. They give them transportation to go to and from their programs. And this is all a way that these programs can be made more accessible. It goes back to the importance of that paid opportunity. Like, how are you making this an available and feasible opportunity for students other than, you know, white, wealthy students that can do unpaid positions that, yeah, and that have the free time to do them. That's how I see Riverwatch doing a really great job in emphasizing that racial inclusion and diversity.
So the cadet class, the mission for them is kind of just being leaders in more equitable parks, really. bringing diversity into the parks and kind of inclusion. So for me, it's kind of, we touch on topics like about racial equity within our units, and we kind of mention things like recently, for example, it was Indigenous Peoples Day. So we kind of had a unit where we went over the importance of land acknowledgement, as well as just kind of encouraging them to join in groups like the Youth Leadership Working Group and other groups too. And overall, just having conversations about equity.
So I've thought about this a lot for the zoo. I've noticed that like the summer camp is mostly white children. And I've thought that it's most likely because of the cost of the summer camp programs. And I feel like if there was maybe an affordable option for lower income people, that I feel that would create a more diverse group of kids. And I feel like that would also, it would just be great to see a variety of kids learning about the environment and nature, and inspire them to want to work with animals too. So yeah, I feel like there's definitely a lot of work that can be done. The zoo being a nonprofit, I feel like there are certain constraints, but I would definitely love to suggest ideas and just to create more diversity and equity.
Definitely. So for time's sakes, we're going to move on to the last question, the big question, I think. How do you envision the future you would like to see? And maybe how do you want to contribute to the vision? And what are your future goals?
Yeah, this question is a big one. So I think that in my journey, I have come to understand the importance of community and the importance of community empowerment as solution. I get into this conversation a lot in my environmental studies capstone. We are doing a lot about racial theory and abolition, and all of abolition is, focused, it's very solution oriented, and it's very oriented around community regeneration and community programs. So I think that I would really love, or the future that I envision, the ideal future, is one that is community-based. It's a place where people can talk to their neighbors instead of maybe, calling the police. It's a place where people can set up distribution centers for food or clothes, or yeah, oh, sorry, I was distracted by the note. Is where they can distribute any kind of needs. So say your neighbors, they don't have to work 3 jobs to worry about surviving. Through this community sharing and community just like collaboration, no one has to worry about survival because you know that you have that network of support. And I think that translates directly to fostering a space where everyone cares about their environment, and environment not just meaning physical, like environment as it's redefined in environmental justice. It's the place where we live, we work, we play. It's not just the physical side of like environment. It's a much bigger definition and understanding now. So I see the future very oriented around community solutions.
So for me, I think the best way to put it really is I envision a future where everyone is just included, whether like that's based on your gender or not based on your gender or the skin color that you have, just however you identify as a person, just being more diverse really, and being kind, as well as just being able to kind of realize that it's okay to make mistakes, but just learn as you grow really. And I guess my future goal really is to kind of be a part of that change. Like I mentioned before, I like to be able to educate myself so that I can go ahead and educate people around me. I think that's my biggest thing. So yeah, a future where really there's change, and where people will grow from, yeah, that's all I got.
So yeah, I guess similar to Lydia and Kiana, I would like to see more inclusion and equity and more opportunities for BIPOC communities. And I've also learned so much the importance of community and in terms of like conservation efforts, because when you include the people where you're going into to where you're going into to conserve the area, it's so important to include the people that actually live there, and it's the best way to help people understand things that are going on around them and to care about the environment. Just educating people and engaging them and making them feel included and that their perspective matters, because it's we're all connected in some way, and we all have to take care of our planet basically, because we all live here, we all share it. It's no one's to claim, and I feel that also educating myself so that I can educate other people, and just being open to change also, open to other people's ideas, and that not everything's black and white, there's a whole spectrum, and we need that diversity. If not, it would be so boring if it was just one way or the other. So yeah, that's what I got.
Hey everyone, thank you all so much. I just wanted to make sure we're at exactly 5 minutes until 1. So I wanted to give a little bit of time to see if there's any questions that are on Facebook. I've been looking at the comments. Most of what I'm seeing is that people are really loving this conversation and are giving you all a lot of props for your answers and for this conversation. A lot of people saying they totally agree about unpaid internships. And I do want to say that Austin Parks Foundation has in the last few years had an internship program, and we pay our interns. And I do think it makes a really big difference. And I think it really broadens the people, the sort of pool of applicants. And so not only are you paying people for their work, which everyone should get paid for their work, but also, you're getting a better talent pool. I mean, we're just getting a lot more people because you're not having to make that decision about whether, oh, now I'm going to have to work, not only like work at Starbucks and this other job so that I can go to this unpaid internship and have a school class load. So anyway, you're getting a lot of props for that. I'm not seeing necessarily any specific questions here. I think you guys did a great job of answering all of the questions, and I'll definitely share the comments because people have such positive things to say about the conversation. So this is awesome. I do have a question from within the webinar chat. Oh, and actually this was also a question. I would like to hear more about Lydia's change from someone who did not pay much attention to nature to one who now works in the environment, and what changed your mind. And actually someone else on Facebook, I did just notice, was wondering what drew you to the cadet program as a person who wasn't necessarily inclined toward that. What sort of like originally drew you there?
Oh, this is kind of a hard question, really. So for me, how do I explain this? For me, it was kind of just the feeling of not having something to do, really. Just kind of, I never really had a hobby beforehand, like before joining the cadet practicum. And really, it was just kind of like at school, there's like 2 different sort of like internship things that you can go into, which was the veterinary kind, and then the parks and recreation, like park ranger. And I was actually in both at the same time my junior year of high school. That's kind of when I realized that I didn't really like the whole veterinary thing. Like I just felt like it wasn't my thing. And then while being in the park ranger cadet practicum, it was kind of like, wow, like I actually do like being outside. So something new. I didn't really I don't know how to explain it really. It was just kind of, I guess like a new door that opened for me, kind of like my awakening really of like how important the outdoors really is for me. Like growing up, I was just kind of like I don't like sweating, I don't like being outside. But just, I don't know, really, it was kind of just like, wow, like I really do have to pay attention more to the outdoors and the environment. It was kind of just like how important it was, not just for myself, but like for my family. My family growing up, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like we just weren't outdoor people. But ever since I joined the cadet practicum, I've noticed a change in like my nieces and nephews. They ask a lot of questions about the practicum. So I always like to tell them about stuff that I do. I don't know, I guess really just the thought of like the outdoors kind of gave me a therapeutic sort of experience within myself. I definitely do use the outdoors now sort of like as a form of therapy, how I mentioned earlier. There's this thing like ecotherapy. I love that. That's my favorite topic to like talk about during the cadet practicum. So yeah.
Very cool. Oh, and I did, Gabby just reminded me there was a question, and we can probably just have a couple people answer this if something pops up immediately for you. What are some instances or ways that have helped you carve out space in these often white dominated spaces? So what are some ways that you create that space for yourself?
It's not the best answer, I think, because everyone has different comfort levels. And like we touched on earlier, it shouldn't be our job to make our situations better. It should be with the help of allies in collaboration with the BIPOC community. But for me, it's just like being brave and persistent and not shooting myself down. I mean, there's a part of like building myself up and reminding myself the reason that I have to work harder and shouldn't have to work harder. And I'm trying to make this easier for future generations. Like kind of being outside of myself and realizing I'm not just doing this for myself, but in doing this right now, in my experience, I'm helping a bigger picture for others. That's why I said I don't know if it's the best answer, because it's kind of vague, but I think just like staying present and like being present and showing up has helped me. And I think it also is, showing up and you see another person that looks like you, even if it's just one. And then maybe next time, it'll be 3, maybe next time it'll be 6. And just like that way, yeah.
I think it's a great answer. And I completely agree, just to kind of tack on a little bit, that it, so often people are put in a position of having to carve out space for themselves, and that shouldn't be the case. It does happen, and it's great to know how you've done that, but you're absolutely right, that allies should, and the dominant culture should be the one to create a comfortable space for people, not vice versa. Kirsten, did you have anything you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Actually, Magali's going to close us out. So
thank you all so much. I just really want to give an extra shout out to Kiana, Lydia, and Valeria. Honestly, like I really enjoyed hearing y'all, and thank you, Brandon, for moderating, and Kathleen for having us and helping us organize this. It's just like a joy to hear these stories. Like I really resonated too with Kiana saying, like, when you see one person that looks like you, it just feels good. And I feel like that space felt that way for me. So I just want to say thank you all. And a couple of things. So if audience members know of any opportunities that are paid for young people, please, please, please send them our way. It's really important to put our money where our mouth is. And if we're committed to racial equity, it means paying people, it means paying young people, and really sharing our power. And so like, if you know of those opportunities, talk to us about that for sure. And then if you'd like to get involved with the Youth Leadership Working Group and thinking about this and thinking about how to as organization leaders and as older people, carve out the space for young people. And also if you want your young people to come and participate with the work that we're doing, please also reach out to us. Kathleen's going to be sharing our contact information after this. And then most of all, first and foremost, is to continue learning and unlearning. So keep educating yourself, keep educating yourself outside and inside of environmental work. Keep thinking about intersectionality, racial equity, and seek out those opportunities actively to really think about and act through anti-racism, and not just inside of this movement, but outside as well. And look at the opportunities for how multiple movements connect. I think just continue to learn and unlearn, and I think leaving room for the fact that you won't always get it right, but keep trying. Keep trying and keep learning and take it with a stride. And I think humility is important for all of us. You know, we will make mistakes. That's like very real. So keeping an open heart and mind when you're pursuing this and thinking about how anti-racism shows up in your work. So with that, just a huge thank you to everyone, and thank you audience members for being here. Reach out to talk with us, and we'd love to get to know you. Did anyone else want to add anything?
I just want to say thank you from Austin Parks Foundation for all of you being here. Thank you to our participants. Thank you to Brandon for facilitating. Thank you, Magali, for that wonderful closeout. This was a fantastic discussion, and we will be sharing everyone's contact information that's comfortable sharing their contact information afterward, and also just some helpful kind of links that are related to this discussion. Thank you all. We really appreciate you being here for the Summit Series. Bye.